Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Collin Manley, getting you ready for some playoff baseball. Yeah, things are still heating up. It's getting to be intense. We just moved on from the wild card series to the division series, cutting things down to 8 teams. It's getting very exciting. I love the wild card series, I'm going to be honest. I definitely have some things that I want to talk about with it, but it was a great time. Fun to see so much baseball in one day. And I didn't think we would get this far. We're in October playing baseball. As we're recording this is October 3rd right now. It'll be released on October 4th. But playoff baseball, we have reached October. This is exciting. This is great stuff. And we got a lot that we got to talk about. We're going to get into our news and noise, some injuries. There's also some other news around the league that we want to touch upon going around in the MLB. I want to take some time to talk about what we have learned from the playoffs. It could be about teams. It could be about the new formats. There's just a lot that I feel like we have to talk about, especially considering how 2020 was such a different season from what we were used to. And so it's nice to reflect upon that a little bit. I want to take some time to do some series previews for the divisional series. Hey, there's some great games that are going to be coming our ways. Finally, some division matchups as well. So we're going to take the time to dive into that. And then lastly, we're going to talk about a little bit about the teams that got eliminated in the playoffs. What's next for those teams? Because that's a big chunk. 8 teams. They have to now look at themselves and go, well, what's next for us? What are we going to do? How are we going to get back to contending? Maybe we're not going to do much, but it's a fun conversation to be had. But we're going to start things off with our news and noise, getting you caught up on everything around the MLB. And we're going to start things off with a little bit of injury news, something that I consider to be very, very big. Mike Clevinger could end up making an appearance for the San Diego Padres in the NLDS against the Dodgers. This was just reported today. Sources coming from Pedro Gomez. Clevinger, if you remember, left on September 23rd after one inning with an arm issue, and he has not appeared in a game since. The Padres have been without Clevinger and Dinelson Lamet in the NL Wildcard Series. They beat the Cardinals without him, but definitely could tell that they had to be maneuvering with some pitching. They had to work with it. They did a full bullpen game in Game 3. So it would be huge to get these two back. Rookie manager Jace Tingler made it work, though. Like we said, he did a great job managing the bullpen, managing this team. The Padres became the first team in baseball history to use 8 or more pitchers in 3 straight postseason games. The first team in baseball history to do that. And, when he was the big acquisition, Clevinger, at the trade deadline, they were really hoping, they were really trying to show that they were all in on this postseason. They thought their team was good enough. And yeah, they'll have some club control moving forward as well. But it definitely is something to be monitoring, as there's optimism starting to change that Clevinger could be ready to return, which anything to help beat the Dodgers is very, very, very big news. And like we said, Lamet, who had been really dominant as a starting pitcher this season, he took himself out of a game against the Giants about a week ago. He was throwing in the 4th inning, called for the athletic trainer to get him out. We haven't really gotten any new news on him, but again, anything to come back and help the Padres is just going to be great news, considering the fact that they had a lot riding on pitchers for this postseason. We know their offense is really, really, really good. We just got to see what's going to happen with that. Starling Marte for the Miami Marlins was hit by a pitch during the 9th inning of Miami's 5-1 victory over the Cubs in Game 1 of the NL Wild Card Series on Wednesday. suffering a small non-displaced fracture on the fifth metacarpal on his left hand, considered day-to-day, was fitted with a brace for his left pinky finger while receiving treatment to reduce the swelling. Marlins are holding out hope he'll be able to return within a matter of days as they are moving on to face the Braves in the next round of the playoffs. Anything to help boost their offense is going to be much appreciated. Some other big injury news that came out had to do with the team that's now eliminated out the Milwaukee Brewers. Ryan Braun, he ended up leaving game one in the National Wild Card Series against the Dodgers. Reports are coming out that he had some resurfacing back stiffness that was going on. It has been bothering him for a few weeks. Not in the starting lineup for game two, where the Brewers ended up losing and their season came to an end. There had been reported that Braun was in some extreme pain. And this is kind of big news because we don't know if this is going to be the last time that we see Ryan Braun with the Brewers. It definitely was talked about a lot about how he might be done in Milwaukee. It might be coming to an end, and we'll have to see. Be a shame if that was the last time. Brewers have a lot they had to figure out as well going into next season. They had a lot of injury issues. Devin Williams wasn't on that roster. Corbin Burns, Brett Anderson, a lot of problems at the end of the year. But that's just kind of the news we have. As we're getting down towards the end, the nitty-gritty with very few teams left, not a great deal of injury news so far, which is a positive. If we've been kind of weathering the storm on a lot of these, you don't want to see an injury be a big part in why a team doesn't succeed in the postseason. So good to see that list that's released by MLB.com all the time with all the injuries piled up, it's pretty low right now. So that's good. Some other news that happens around the league. Well, the Philadelphia Phillies, their GM, Matt Klatak, he steps down. This is going to be the third straight September that the team kind of fell out of the postseason, and they haven't made a postseason for 9 consecutive seasons. Klatak will be reassigned to another position in the organization, and Ned Rice is going to serve as the interim general manager until the Phillies hire someone to run baseball operations. Klatak was hired in October of 2015 by the team president, Andy MacPhail. After serving as the assistant GM for the Angels for 4 seasons, the Phillies were .326 and .382 in 5 seasons. And it's a tough thing. And I don't know if the GM is necessarily the one to blame fully for the Phillies. It feels like he has been bringing in talent. It feels like they have some young players that have been coming up. He's made some trades. He's been trying to help the bullpen and everything, but it's very well known that this Phillies team has been underperforming based on some of the talent that they have on their team already. So, I mean, you can kind of see it with the organization as he's going to be reassigned to a new role within the team. So they're not fully putting all the blame on him. This next season is going to be a big one, especially this offseason as well. As for the Phillies, JT Realmuto is a free agent. Bryce Harper has already kind of been voicing himself, saying how he knows JT needs to be back with the team, but he's going to be the coveted guy when getting a quality catcher that does things defensively and offensively for you. It costs a pretty penny, and the Phillies have been spending some money over the recent years trying to get some guys, and Harper knows that too well, as he's one of the guys who's gotten one of the bigger contracts. And it could be something as simple as, since they haven't reached a contract extension so far with Realmuto, maybe that's why the move possibly could be happening. There's a lot that could be going on. A lot could be going on, and there's definitely some frustrations with the Phillies. As to end the year, it didn't go well. They went 1-7 in their last 8 games. They could have made the postseason. Now hindsight's a little 20/20, I understand, but they would have made the postseason with 2 wins in those final 8 games. So definitely some upsetting times in Philadelphia. They just want to get back to the postseason, and it'd be a good thing to see them get back into the postseason, that's for sure. Some other news around the league. The Detroit Tigers GM Al Avila says that AJ Hinch and Alex Cora are being considered for the open manager job. He's not ruling out the possibility of either of these two taking over. Interesting thing to say, because Hinch and Cora were both suspended through the 2020 postseason for their roles. What happened to do with the Astros sign sealing scandal? Astros fired Hinch and general manager Jeff Luhnow on January 13th because of it. Cora lost his job with the Boston Red Sox the next day. It's interesting to see. You got to think it's going to be a matter of time until these guys get back into their positions. I had my thoughts and considerations on Alex Cora as well. Boston's moved on from Ron Renicky. He was only an interim manager to begin with. That's the thoughts when he took the position. I had thoughts and considerations that is Boston going to consider Alex Cora coming back, knowing how well they played under Cora, but there's a lot going on there. I find it interesting that a team is really being vocal about, hey, we'll consider these guys, especially considering the background that is coming. The cheating scandal is big. It's big. And Avila was quoted as, really, I can't say that I've eliminated anybody. The cheating scandal is not a good thing, obviously. They're serving their suspensions, and once their suspensions are over, then they'll be free to pursue their careers. So we have not eliminated anybody from our list at this point. So I get it to an extent. Once you serve the penalty, it's not like there's anything against you coming back. But a team that's trying to be on the up and up, that's for sure, with some young pitching prospects and trying to just turn their things around, I don't know if you'd want to necessarily put yourself under a bigger microscope. But hey, if they're proven successful managers too, you want to consider that. So there's definitely a lot that goes into that. Some other news, some sad news when it comes to the MLB. Hall of Famer Bob Gibson of the St. Louis Cardinals, their ace, passed away at the age of 84. The Cardinals were the team to confirm this to ESPN. Gibson was born in Omaha, Nebraska, played all of his 17 MLB seasons with the Cardinals from 1959 through 1975. It had been announced in July of 2019 he would have been suffering from pancreatic cancer. He was a 9-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champion. He earned 251 wins, struck out 3,117, and had a 2.91 ERA. Known as a fierce competitor. 2-time Cy Young Award winner, World Series MVP for the Cardinals. His list of accomplishments are incredible. And sad to say, we lost a great one, a baseball legend for sure. And it was really cool to see a lot of the Cardinals players, but also other players and people that cover the MLB all around, showing their support, showing their love for Gibson, how great he was. I know I've been having a blast reading articles about him because obviously he's way before my time. But even as someone just growing up in baseball, you know the name Bob Gibson. And he was an ultimate player, did a lot of great things, and he is for sure going to be missed. Another person that happened to pass away recently from the baseball world, Sweet Lou Johnson, who hit a key home run for the LA Dodgers in Game 7 of the 1965 World Series and scored the only run in Sandy Koufax's perfect game the same year he died. He passed away at 86. Died Thursday night at his home in Los Angeles, according to the Dodgers, who were informed by his wife, been ill and had recently celebrated a birthday, but was definitely under the weather. They had said things were not looking good. Johnson played 17 seasons in professional baseball, including 8 years in the majors with the Chicago Cubs, California Angels, Milwaukee Braves, Dodgers, and Cleveland Indians. He hit .258 with 48 home runs and 232 RBIs in 677 games. So sad to see some big names, some big-time players from way back in baseball history pass away. But we got to take a moment to honor them because it's the right thing to do. In the history of baseball, your thoughts and prayers go out to their families at home. Definitely not easy to lose anybody at any time. So that's going to be it for our news and noise around the league, getting you caught up on all injuries, all baseball news, anything MLB related. We got a lot of things that we still want to talk about. The next thing we are going to be diving into, what did we learn from these MLB playoffs? They were different. They were very different. That's something we can say with a lot of confidence. What were some things we liked, we didn't like? What did we even learn about some teams? We're going to talk about that when we come back here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
now that we have gotten through the first round of our wild card playoffs in the 2020 year, it definitely is something that's going to be fun to reflect upon because we don't know if this is going to continue on in the future seasons. That's for sure. There's a lot that could potentially happen. And I think it's important for us to take a step back and look at everything and just talk about what we learned from these playoffs. Now, it could be something about what we've learned about the teams. It could be something that we've learned about the format. I really do want to touch upon a lot of these things because it was very nice to see how everything was going to break down after all of this. My first kind of thought process on this, as much fun as it was to have some days where we had 8 consecutive games being played, I mean, that was fun in a sense, but I think we learned pretty easily that 16 teams is just too many. It's too many for a postseason, and it was a nice move by the MLB. It really was, because with 60 games, I think they truly understood that we weren't going to be clearing everything up. We weren't going to have our truest, most competitive teams because over the stretch of a 162 game season, we see this a lot. We see a lot of the times teams that are fighting up until the last day, even with 162 games. And when it was coming down to it, not as much the American League, but the National League, there was tons of different outcomes that we could have had just on the last day of who was going to get in the playoffs, who was going to be out, what our seeding movement was going to be. That was on both sides. There were going to be teams all over the place. Nobody was really locked into anything. So it was really nice to see that play out. It was fun. But if we're going to go back to a similar season, even if we don't go all the way up to 162, which I imagine we will next year regardless, 16 teams obviously is way too much, way too much. And we even saw that with some of the teams that were there in the postseason anyways. They got beat on pretty quickly and made quick work of, and they're out of the postseason. Like these series went very quick. Out of the 8 possible series, I mean, only 2 of them went to a third game. So that really tells us a lot there. If I were to try and maybe fix this just a little bit, I think next year we should look more at just 6 teams each. So instead of 8 teams on both sides, let's go 6 on both sides. Get your 3 division winners. Obviously justified. Get those in there. But I don't really care for the second place finishers. Let's get our division winners, and then let's just go 3 straight wild cards. Just get your best record guys in there, because guaranteeing a spot to someone finishing second isn't always a great thing. But with that said, we had some second place finishers like the Astros and the Marlins move on, while we had some division winners move out. But I still would award a division 2 spots. Let's go with best record earned, but also that's going to come with actually playing more teams outside of your division in future years, obviously, if we're able to move forward from this and not have to play such a tight and congested schedule. But with that, the one thing that gets interesting is we're going to have to work out some buys, most likely. And that's fair enough. I mean, we could go to something that's very similar to the NFL format. Now, the NFL has 4 division winners and then 2 wild cards. Obviously, MLB only has 3 divisions in each side, so 3 winners, 3 wild cards. The top 2 seeds then can get a bye. We can give a bye. And then why don't we do a wild card round there and then just have those teams that are playing do a 3-game series there. Go 3, 5, 7, just like they're going to do. No problem with that. I think that's going to be the best way to go about it. And in reality, I thought these 3-game series were kind of a win. If it wasn't going to be competitive, it was done quick. And the series that were great went to game 3, and it was exciting. I mean, the Padres and Cardinals series was exciting. It really was. Same with the A's and the White Sox. I mean, they were fun to watch. These other ones, we got them out quick. And I can't say that they weren't useful. I mean, I'm someone in the camp that I believe that the 1-game wild cards is something I'm not necessarily really high on to begin with. I really hate that these teams, they only have these 2 teams trying to make it for wild card spots, and they only get 1 game to push in. Anything can happen in 1 game. We see that. I think 3-game series obviously is a little more conclusive evidence. Now, it's just what I see. And I think the 3 wild cards would work because if we have more regular season games to begin with, we're going to clear up a lot more of our races. It's going to be a lot clearer. We're not going to be coming down to 4 different teams trying to get in on the last day or be between that 7 and 8 spot. It's not going to happen if we get back up there. I would be all for a season that goes to maybe roughly 100 games and we go with these 6 teams in the playoffs. Now, this is obviously just spitballing ideas. There's a lot more that's going to go into this, but it's just something that will have to be considered for sure. Upsets, and they happened. I mean, we talked about this a little bit. Upsets could be happening in this postseason with 8 teams on both sides, 3-game series, anything can happen. And we may even have to put quote unquote upsets because the Yankees were still the betting favorites over the Indians, even though they were the higher seed. The Astros taking the Twins out easily was definitely something that was very, very interesting, along with the Marlins making quick work of the Cubs. Not something that we would have saw. And that's why the best of 3 is nice. Anything can still truly happen. It's short enough where a team getting hot for a couple games can win a series, but yet it's longer than the 1-game stretch that I think it's easier to take it in. I mean, I don't complain in the NFL because those games are so competitive and everything because it's 1 game. Basketball, they do every round best of 7 because they know all it needs is 1 team to get hot. That middle ground of a 3-game series, I think, is really nice. And if there's one thing that I greatly thought was fun coming out of this, is it puts so much more pressure on pitchers. It really does. We don't have this long series where we can get one back later. No. These games are important right away. It's just better than the 1-game wild card, I think. I mean, look at a team that came out hot with its starters. Let's look at the Miami Marlins. Alcantara and Sixto Sanchez both were great in shutting down the Cubs team. If you get 2 good games out of your starters, you can win a series. And then talk about all the teams that decided to go bullpen games. They were using all of their arms. And the thing that gets fun with that is the universal DH allows teams to play that way with less worry, less concern, because you're not batting your guys. You're not diving into your bench players at all. You could just keep swapping pitchers inning to inning. And it allows managers to make some great moves. I mean, the Padres executed that. Now, injuries played a big part into why they had to do it, for sure, but it was still brilliant and genius to see, and it was so much fun. I really did enjoy the 3-game series because of that. Now, it will make some people wonder if we changed it to best of 5. So let's say if we went to the 16 format, if we changed it to best of 5, would it really have changed many of these outcomes? It's so hard to say. I mean, out of our 8 series, 6 of them were clean sweeps. The Padres Cardinals was fun. The thing that would have worried me moving forward is the Padres pitching, but at the same time, their bats were coming alive. So that series being stretched out definitely would have gotten interesting. Then you have Oakland and Chicago. I mean, I would have loved to see that series go longer. I really would have. That was a fun one to watch as well. I think the White Sox are a pretty darn good team. It's just crazy how things had moved so much when they went to being the winner of the American League Central to falling all the way to 7th and having to take on the A's. Even if they could have stayed in that 3 spot and gotten the Astros, we might have been talking about them differently. That White Sox team is really good. They just ran into another really good team in the postseason. I also would have been interested to see how lineups would have been constructed. And I mean that in the sense of we saw about a lot of names of guys that were left off the playoff roster or the playoff series, considering the fact that you only get 3 games. We might have had some guys staying on those rosters if this series potentially has to go to a game 4, a game 5. So that's something that I would definitely be watching as well. It's just all in all, the playoffs, 16 too much. Let's cut it down. Get more games back in the regular season. Now, obviously, that's something we couldn't control this year. I get it. But I think that's going to be the move coming forward, hopefully. I mean, I like the expanding playoffs. The wild card round, I think, was a big hit. Let's keep it rolling for at least next year. It's not going to hurt you to try it for another season. I don't think people are going to complain to get more rounds in the playoffs, more teams in the playoffs. That's still going to be a thing that's going to be great. If there was a disappointment, and this is now going to some teams, if you are a fan of any teams in the American League or National League Central, just woof. I mean, 7 teams out of the 16 were from the American League, National League Central, 4 from the National League, 3 in the American League. None of them made it out of the wild card series. None of them. Combined, the Cubs, Reds, and Brewers, they barely scored any runs. It's unbelievable. These were the competitive ones. We were enjoying watching this. We thought these were some of the best teams. Come to playoff time, they were not getting out of there. I look forward to the future seasons. Something that's going to help with this too. Actually seeing these teams in the playoffs play each other in the regular season. Again, it's the constrictions, it's the limitations we had coming into this season. I understand that. But we'll have a clearer picture on which team is really maybe better, which team might be a threat just because their record is worse. We're going to have a better feel for all of these teams when they come to the playoffs. All of them. It's definitely something to watch. But the Brewers and Reds, it was hard to have expectations for them because you're that 8 and 7 seed. The Dodgers are too good. I didn't think the Brewers were going to compete there for a second. The Braves, one of the best offenses, even though that the Reds have some strong starting pitchers, the Braves were one of the best off seasons coming into the postseason. They definitely struggled a little bit with their bats right away, but you didn't have high expectations for them. It's tough for the Cardinals to take on the Padres. That's a tough ask because they've been one of the best teams in baseball this year. The Cubs obviously getting knocked off was a bit of a disappointment, I'm sure, for them. They have some big decisions they're going to be having to make moving forward. And then the American League Central, though, this is the one that's kind of upsetting. The Indians, I can give a little bit of a pass. We know their strength is pitching. They got hit around by a healthy Yankee team. It's hard to ask this Indians team to have their offense carry them because that's just not been their thing this year. They got a couple big time bats, but we know their strength coming in. We know it, and it got exposed against the Yankees team that was finally healthy. So them, I can give a little bit of a pass. That upset doesn't surprise me. And like we said before, the Yankees were the betting favorites in that series, even at the 5 seed. They were the favorites in the series, considered by Vegas. So you give them a little bit. But the Twins, that loss to the Astros hurts. I mean, you know that their thing is offense, and they just couldn't put it all together. Their pitching wasn't that bad. They definitely gotten some pinches that they need to get out of, but just underwhelming coming from their offense all around. And that White Sox team, I really wonder what happens if that White Sox team gets to be the 3 seed instead of the 7. They fought Oakland hard. Oakland's a good team. It's just upsetting for a lot of these teams. Now, the future is still bright for some of these teams, especially the White Sox. The Indians, I think, can put something together. They still have all that pitching. The Twins have a lot of guys still under contract, and they have a lot of guys that are going to be sticking around, but their playoff woes just seem to continue to go on and on and on. Some things need to be fixed there, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later when we dive into what's next for some of these playoff elims, teams' decisions that they're going to have to make at some winter meetings. What are they going to do to try to improve their teams? Maybe they stand pat. We'll see. We're going to talk about it. But all in all, I think a lot of people would agree. I think this postseason was a lot of fun. I think a lot of great things happened. And we got to take these and we just got to fine tune it. Make it better. Put the best product out there you possibly can. I wonder as well for a lot of the young crowds, since these series are going to go so quick, if they're going to be more intrigued because they're like, all right, next matchup, new round, here we go. I really think the fast movement of this is going to be helpful for the MLB. I wish other sports would do this a little bit. I wish basketball would go back to a 5-game series in the first round. I don't like that it's best of 7 every single round. You can shorten it up, especially when you think some of these matchups just aren't going to be up to snuff. You really don't think they're going to be that great. So that's kind of what I think we learned from this playoffs. It was fun. It was fun. I had some days where it was really hard to focus at work, that's for sure, where you really want to be watching every single game because you just know how much each one matters. You really do. So that's going to be it for some things we learned on the playoffs. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to come back. Let's talk about some series previews as we move on to the ALDS. What do we have for matchups? What can we expect to see? I think it's going to be a fun one. We're going to talk about that in a little bit coming back on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Well, now that we got our taste of the playoffs and we got to talk about it in that first round, that wild card round, talk about what we learned about, it's time to talk about the games that we actually have coming forward. Yeah, some series previews. And here is the stuff I was looking for. Let me explain. All the way leading up to the postseason, we were taking time to look at what's the seedings like, what our matchups would be at certain points in the year. And it seemed like for a long stretch leading into that final week of the regular season, we were seeing a lot of matchups that were going to be straight up division rivals, division matchups that made that first round field very, very, very exciting. Then the postseason actually happens. And we pretty much get none of them. We had Tampa Bay versus Toronto, but Cleveland, New York was not one. Minnesota, Houston, no. Oakland, Chicago White Sox, no. Dodgers, Brewers, so on, so on, so on. We weren't having any of these, which truly to me was a full-on bummer because as I was prepping and getting ready for the postseason, I'm like, I want these division matchups to happen. It's going to bring a new element to the game, make it more exciting in these rounds of 3. Bring it on. Well, turns out I just had to wait a little bit because the National League Division Series and the American League Division Series, we have our division matchups. So maybe that's our thank you we need to send out to the American League Central and the National League Central. Maybe we got to thank them for getting booted in all these games so that we can have our division matchups that we want. So I'm going to take these 4. I'm going to look at each one of them, talk about what their records were coming into the season, based on what I think excitement level is. Now, everyone obviously can be very different from me. That's totally okay. I understand. But I'm going to rate these at level that I think is, most exciting moving forward. The first one that I think for sure, hate to say it's the least exciting because it is our underdog team that's really pushing through in this postseason, is going to be Braves Marlins. Now, the NL East matchup that we have here brings in one of the best offenses from the regular season against a team that, even though they had a winning record in the Marlins, 31-29, they were a minus 41 run differential. Their strength at times can be their young pitching can go off. Their offense, very unpredictable, inconsistent. I mean, the Marlins got outscored by the Braves this year by about 80 runs, 85 runs. But they are fully committed into being the underdogs. I saw shirts from some of the Marlins players they were wearing said the Miami bottom feeders. Like they are just embracing you don't think we're going to do this? Well, just watch. We're going to do it. And they're getting some great play from some guys. I mean, Jesus Aguilar has been awesome for them. He has really revived his career for Miami this season. They still have Marte, who is a nice bat at the top end. I mean, you're hopeful for that. Pitching is still going to be that strength. What Alcantara and Sixto Sanchez did versus the Cubs was awesome. That was special. The Marlins have some top end starting pitching talent. It is there for them. And they're going to need it against a Braves team that knows how to put runs on the board. That top end of that lineup with Acuna, Freeman, Azuña, Albi, like all those bats up there, you need to have the pitching to get through them. And that's what's going to be important. The matchup definitely to watch is going to be Marlins pitching, Braves bats, how that goes. The Braves have also been getting some great performances from their starters recently. Been up and down roller coaster for them all season. But Max Fried has been awesome. What more can you say? He's going to be a Cy Young candidate. And then Ian Anderson, the young Ian Anderson, has been awesome. So we're going to see if that surprising run for the Marlins can continue. I'd love to see it happen. I've been loving the statistic. It's been fun to say. Every time that the Marlins make the postseason, they win a World Series. They're 2 for 2. Why not keep it going, huh? I mean, I would love to see them keep moving on. We love cheering for underdogs. I know I do. Some people like seeing the large markets. Me, I like seeing the teams get there that you don't think at all. Now, the thing that's going to get exciting about these division matchups, and also it's going to get interesting in the sense, and I will probably say this quite a bit, is when you're playing these teams that you've actually seen quite a bit in the regular season, there's not as many surprises out there. I don't think that the Marlins starters are going to sneak up on the Braves like they might have against the Cubs. I also don't think that some of these bats for the Braves are going to get the greatest pitching their way. They're not going to see easy stuff to hit. They have experience against each other. They know a little bit more about these teams. And I'm a little unsure which way that's going to go. If that's going to make these more competitive or if that's going to make it more leaning towards the higher seeds. It could go either way. I can see the argument both ways. But my first guess on this would be that the Braves move out of this series. But I think the Marlins are going to put up a fight. I really do. They have learned to scrap this year better than any team probably has, and it's because they've had to be the team to overcome a lot. We wondered if their season was going to even continue at some point with all the issues they were having with COVID-19. It's really fun to see them here in the NLDS. What a move from there. But yeah, early guesses would be for me that the Braves move on in this one, but fun series, fun season from the Marlins so far. The next series that I think would be the most exciting is going to be A's Astros. Now, I wonder if there's going to be a little more chippiness in this series just because of the fact of what Carlos Correa has been saying about. Carlos Correa had a very interesting take after beating the Twins and people not expecting us to be here. And we're doing, you got to be aware, Carlos, of why teams are kind of against you right now. You kind of have a huge scandal against you. And that's really the issue and why a lot of people don't want you there. And I wonder if the A's take a little offense to that, because in all reality, the Astros were the team to beat in the National League or the American League West at the start of the year. But Oakland took it early and held on. They were up 7 games in this division. And this Oakland A's team has a lot of skill there. Now, it's still going to hurt them that they're not rolling in with their best possible lineup. I understand that. They don't have everyone there. But they have some pitching, which is going to be good for them. And they have some big-time potential power guys. Marcus Semien, doing all right for them, batting .250. Tommy La Stella, big pickup for them at the trade deadline. It's going to be Matt Olson. Sean Murphy, the young guy for him. He's been awesome. Chris Davis has contributed a little bit for the A's so far. Can this team get enough offense going? Because they have the star power. Offense wasn't always the most consistent thing for them this season. Even though they put up quite a few of runs, it's consistency throughout their lineup. That's the thing that we're really looking for. So we'll see what happens with them. I want to see Jesus Luzardo get another shot. He got kind of roughed up a little bit in his first outing. He's a better pitcher than what he showed right away. We got other guys. I mean, Chris Bassett was impressive in his first game. Mike Fiers came out. I mean, he started the game. He got roughed around a little bit. I wonder if he's going to get the start next time. But a lot of guys have pitched for this Oakland A's team. It's going to be interesting to see. Now, the Astros are interesting in another sense, is that their pitching is also very much in question. Zach Greinke came out, looked good like he always does. Greinke is just reliable. He's been one of my favorite pitchers to watch because he really mixes things up. He'll mix speeds. He'll mix so much coming at you. He is a great deal of fun to watch. It's going to be Houston putting up runs as well. Kyle Tucker was huge for them in that first series. Same with Carlos Correa. They both batted very, very, very well. Michael Brantley had a couple good games. The rest of that batting order didn't really get anything going. Didn't have to, but they really didn't have to because the Twins' offense wasn't really there. They got shut down. I mean, coming out of this first series, and I know it's only 2 games, but with the 6 pitchers that were thrown by the Astros, 4 of them leave with a 0 ERA. And both the starters, Greinke and Urquidy, they both have an ERA under 2.5 at this moment. So it's going to be about Oakland putting pressure on the Astros. This one has potential to be way more heated. It really does. And I hope that the Astros come out and put up a fight, but I also hope that the A's come out really chippy and they want to remind the Astros, hey, we won the division. Don't forget that. We are the team to beat in this division. Let's go have a very fun series. I like the upside potential of this one, but all in all, I think that the Astros can't continue that magic. I would think the A's are going to move on from this one, but we'll see. I could definitely agree that this one could go either way. The second one that I find, and picking between these top 2 was hard, especially considering these are some competitive division matchups from the regular season, but I'm going to go Rays and Yankees. This was a heated series during the regular season, and a lot of these players are downplaying it right now. But don't tell me that there's not going to be a little bit of bad blood coming in. And the first time someone gets hit, the first time any type of controversy gets started, this one could potentially pick up. Now, this Yankees team was a very big time favorite at the beginning of the season. They had a rough go of it. Injuries played a big part. But when they're healthy, they are just as good as any other team in baseball. They really are. The other flip side of this, though, is we knew the Tampa Bay Rays were going to be very good, and they have been very good. They are comparable to the Indians in the sense of what the Yankees saw, and starting pitching is really good, but their offense is better. They're the Indians, but a better version. Tampa Bay is a great, great team, and we can't sleep on them. This might, again, picking between these last 2 series was tough. This might be the best series as well. I would pick this one over Astros, A's for sure. That's why I have it up in my excitement ranks. But it's just something about Tampa Bay I don't always get excited about. It might just because they're so solid, they're so good, they're so clean as of recent that you just don't go nuts about them. But they're a good baseball team, and that's that. You can't knock a team for just being solid, for being good. And the Yankees, as strong and as tough as they be, the Rays are going to be quite the foe for them in this round. So that one's going to be exciting. This one really could go either way. It really could go either way. My initial guess is that the Rays offense is a little bit more and they get to the Yankees. But I'm hopeful that this one goes the full games in this series. I think the Yankees can really push the Rays, but I think the Rays just barely come out on top. Next, and lastly, what I think has to be the most exciting series because it has what has been the best team in baseball all year and what has potentially been the second or third best team in baseball all year, the matchup between the Padres and the Dodgers. The Dodgers made quick work of the Brewers, but I would like to point out they didn't win convincingly. was a 4-2 game and a 3-0 game. They didn't beat the Brewers into submission. Something that concerns me a little bit. Their pitching was good, but at the same time, the Brewers' bats are not very good. So take that any way you want to take it. But the talent on that team for the Dodgers is out of this world, and Mookie Betts looks like he is in postseason form. I still sit here bitter as a Red Sox supporter, Red Sox fan, that he is not still in Boston. But I can still appreciate him as a player because Mookie's solid. Came out of that first round batting .429 with 3 RBIs. Of the 7 runs they scored, he's accountable for 3 of them. And he was a run himself. So, I mean, he is a big part of why they're here. They got other guys that hit well for them. I mean, Austin Barnes did well in a game. Bellinger is doing okay. Chris Taylor doing okay. Their pitching looked tough. Their starters looked tough. Outside of Walker Buehler, nobody else gave up a run for the Dodgers. Nobody else. And they went through quite a few guys. I think they had 6 total pitch. Yeah, 6 total pitch. If you get to their bullpen, it's hard to get runs. Kenley Jansen's been solid again. Brusdar Graterol, who should also be a Red Sox, but they decided to push away from him. He looks tough out of the bullpen as well. Clayton Kershaw, as much as we like to talk about his ups and downs in the postseason, 8 innings pitched, 13 Ks is a pretty nice statement. Looking like he was ready. He was ready to pitch. I worry a great deal about what the Padres are fully going to bring into this series pitching-wise. Are we going to see a couple of those guys that weren't on the roster for the first round come back? But if not, it's a concern. Zach Davies was one of their better guys this year. He got roughed up. Paddock got roughed up. They went with a bullpen game, their last game, and that was the best they had looked pitching-wise. Funny enough. Their offense, though, looks like it's starting to click a little bit again. Fernando Tatis is getting hot again. Hosmer's had his moments. Will Myers had his moments. I mean, Myers and Tatis both having 2 home runs in Game 2. Machado also hitting some out. This offense is scary. Outside of the Dodgers, and maybe even a little bit better than the Dodgers, when everything's right, this Padres offense can be very, very, very good. My concerns with their pitching moving forward is the only thing that's going to be holding them back. That's the only thing. And that's why ultimately, if I have to make a guess, if I have to make a call, I'm leaning more the Dodgers to make it out of this series than I am the Padres. So that's kind of my guesses on these first 4. They're going to be fun series. They really are. I as much as I rank them here 1 through 4 in excitement, Padres, Dodgers top, A's, Yankees, A's, Astros, then Braves, Marlins. There's still 4 going to be very fun, exciting series. Potential to be great. But if I'm seeing 4 teams moving on, I'm going Dodgers, Rays, A's, Braves. Kind of going chalk there. I know, not crazy exciting, but just what my thoughts are, my thinking. It's going to be fun either way. I look forward to these series starting up. We're going to have some great baseball coming in the future. So we're going to take another quick break, and then we're going to come back because we got to talk about those teams that just left us in the postseason. What is next for these teams that have been eliminated to the playoffs? They got some big decisions to make. What do they need to do to contend and be back next year here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast?
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Even though some teams' seasons have ended, that doesn't mean that they stop to take a breath and watch to see what happens. No, they got to make some decisions. We have a lot that's going on. 8 teams have been eliminated from the playoffs, and God, I can't get over this. I can't get over the fact that it's NL and AL Central. It's funny because we just saw a tweet not long ago from Trevor Bauer in which he said, "Oh, I thought the NL Central was bad. It looks like we're the ones sending 4 teams to the playoffs." And then he kind of joked about himself, saying, "Oh, this doesn't look like a great take now, as all 4 of us have been eliminated in the wild card series." But even for the American League Central, they sent 3 teams, and we thought this was going to be 3 very strong teams. I mean, I know personally for sure. I believed in the White Sox. Tough draw getting the Oakland A's in the first round. Believed in the Twins. I mean, that one's a stumper. That one's you would have really thought a lot of people thought they were going to get past the Astros, and that one was interesting. But the Indians also kind of getting the bad luck of the draw going up a very good Yankees team that we expected to be a great team. We really did expect them to be great. But when the Yankees are healthy, they're tough to beat. They're just flat out tough to beat, and that's just the way it is. So we are going to take the time to look at these 8 teams and just kind of give a brief discussion on, well, what comes next? What are they looking to do for themselves as we move forward into the 20 and 21 season? Now, some teams are obviously going to have to consider some adjustments to their roster. That's definitely for sure, but others not so much. Not so much. It's definitely interesting to look at each team, what their roster is made of, what their strengths were this year, and what they're going to try to build upon next season. And we're going to start things off with the Blue Jays. We're going to stay in the American League right away. And they are one of the easier ones to talk about in all this because at 32 and 28, getting that 8th spot in the playoffs, I don't think many were really thinking that, okay, we're going to be diving into the postseason in this shortened season when we kind of have just a lot going on. And it's time for these guys to just develop. Okay, so the playoff field, it was nice for them to get in. They were a surprise to make it to the postseason. First time since 2016. It didn't last very long. I understand, but it's time to just let these guys develop, get better. They have all of these nice young players. A lot of these guys that could be staples in this lineup for quite a bit moving forward. They're going to get more playing time moving on. I mean, we know about Vlad, we know about Biggio, we know about Bichette, we know about Alejandro Kirk, my new favorite guy, but there's more to it. There's a lot to this Blue Jays team. There's a lot of young, fun pieces. And it's just going to be time for them. Time to get everything going. I mean, we even got to talk about Gurriel, who's been great for them. Hernandez. It's just the future looks bright. If there's one thing that we could seriously consider and see them potentially go after, it might be some starting pitching. That would maybe be the biggest thing. Maybe even a little bullpen help, but I mean, a lot of teams are going to be looking for bullpen help. Trying to get things shored up on that side because the offense is something that we project, at least going forward, to be very good. So getting the pitching to complement that before they have to start dealing out a bunch of big contracts to the young guys, that might be the thing that we're watching most going forward. They had even some guys like at the end of their bullpen, like Kirby Yates, who was not healthy at the end of the year. He might be someone to come back and help this team. So the Blue Jays, they have it easy in saying this is just a developed team. Developed team, that's the next step. Staying in that American League, the White Sox. This team is loaded. Offense, talent. You go just right across the board with these guys, and you know they're going to be kind of the same. It's going to be a little bit of development. I mean, Jose Abreu is one of those guys that's getting older. He has Monty Grandal. A recent free agent addition. He's one of their older starters at this point, but when you go across the rest of the way, I mean, young talent everywhere. Moncado, Anderson, Eloy Jimenez, you got Luis Robert in center field. They're going to be a developed thing as well. Dallas Keuchel will be back. He had a good season for him. They're hoping that Michael Kopech will be a great player to come back. He sat out the season because of COVID concerns. That's a big-time arm coming back. Giolito was a nice pitcher for them. If anything, they're going to try to shore up maybe the bullpen a little bit. Maybe they'll be in on a starting pitcher. I don't think that's going to be necessarily the case. I would say bullpen work is going to be the biggest for them, and maybe just a little depth to be added. The White Sox are for sure going to be one of the favorites in the American League Central to win it next year. I think that's for sure. And I don't think they need to panic. I really don't. They played a very tough A's team. A very tough A's team. It stings to get knocked out, I know. But they definitely could look at it as another team to develop. That's for sure. Staying in that American League Central because, hey, that's all we have left is Central teams. The Cleveland Indians. Easy to say. More offense is the first thing. They have some players on that team that are offensively talented. They will be back and they will be competitive. That's for sure. Because we know that their pitching is top notch. Now, Shane Bieber got knocked around by the Yankees. Yes, we know. But going off the rest of the year, you know he's solid. Carrasco, you know, is solid. You know, Plesac is solid. McKenzie is another player on that team. They have pitching. It's all going to be about their offense and how they build that up. But their biggest question mark really moving forward, and it's something that kind of got muffled this year, and a little bit is because he didn't have his best season, is what's going to happen with Francisco Lindor. There was a recent quote from Lindor. A reporter asked him, hey, could the Indians sign you? Is it possible? And he was clear in saying, oh, yeah, the Indians make a lot of money. They can definitely sign me. And there's a different ways you could read into that. You could read into that saying that, hey, it's possible to stay here, or he's saying, no, I want my money. It could be a combination of both, for sure. But what happens with Lindor moving forward is going to be a big picture. He is going to be in a lot of trade conversations this winter. He's going to be in a great amount of trade conversations. Will not be surprised if he's moved. Will not. And it's just going to be something that's going to be coming up over and over again, rumors throughout. We know Cleveland is not scared to deal players. They are not. Trevor Bauer was traded. Corey Kluber, Mike Clevenger. They are not scared to trade anybody before they're going to hit free agency. That's why with Lindor, that possibly could be the case. We know their pitching is strong. Now they need to look at that offensive side and see what can we do to help that pitching on the other end. Because they will be competitive, and it will also be great to have Terry Francona back full-time, for sure. I'm sure Cleveland would love to have that. Last team in the American League, the Minnesota Twins. Now, they are interesting. They gave out a big contract last year to Josh Donaldson, and he was hurt at the end of the year. He had definitely a lot of injury issues. I'd like to give him a little benefit of the doubt on that one, let's see him healthy and see if this contract was worth it. It was a gamble. It for sure was a gamble. They have a lot of guys on the team. They love to hit home runs. It's going to be shoring up a lot of their roster. They love their starting lineup. They really do. They have a lot of offensive firepower. Pitching really isn't that bad. They got some great seasons from some guys like Maeda, Dobnak. They got some good starting pitching going for them. They may want to get some better arms, a couple better arms at the back end of the bullpen, but once again, hey, who doesn't? It's just, you got to think at some point, the Twins team, they look at themselves and they got to say, it's not the talent in the room. It's not the talent that's the problem. We're winning games. We are doing well in the regular season. We are winning and getting to the postseason. Just what do we need to do to win in the postseason? What consistent play do we need to get? Because it almost feels like their team that they have disappears once they get there. It's just not the same team. Something is going wrong. They need to figure it out. I don't expect the Twins to make a lot of noise this offseason. I really don't, because they probably are very confident in what they have. It's just, what can you do when you get to the postseason? They're a big question mark. If they do something crazy, I'm not going to knock them on it, because they got to shake something up. But I feel like a lot of the moves aren't going to be happening. I really don't with the Twins. So they might look a lot similar to what we saw this last year. Moving over to the National League, Milwaukee Brewers right away. we're going to talk about it. We're going to hear about it. It's going to come around in December as well. Are they going to trade Josh Hader? The Brewers listened before the trade deadline. They listened last offseason. And he wasn't their best reliever. Let's just be honest. Devin Williams was. And if the Brewers think they can get a haul for Hader, and they think Devin Williams is the real deal, they might have to consider making a move. Because what they were lacking is any type of offensive consistency. And if you can get players in the door to help you out, that's going to be the move. They signed a lot of guys to contracts in this last offseason that were head scratching. They were trying to put together a team. Sometimes I feel like they assume they're the smartest team in the room, but a lot of these guys didn't pan out. They just did not pan out on this team, and they found some more consistent players towards the end, but 1 through 9, things were not great, and you hope Yelich responds. You hope things get better, but a lot of those other players they were throwing out there day to day was just a struggle. I mean, there's a reason that Eric Sogard is back in Milwaukee. I mean, you love him. You love him as a person. You love his effort and everything, but he's just not the baseball player you want to be trotting out there every day. Any type of move to get some offensive consistency will be appreciated. Okay, there's going to be decisions with Ryan Braun coming up as well. We talked about that a little bit previously. What's going to happen with him? They could look at starting pitchers. There's potential that could happen, but I literally sit here at the end of the year and I don't know if their starting pitching is really that much of a problem or if it's the fact that their lack of offense doesn't help their pitchers. Because when you get to their bullpen's scary. Problem is they're not getting to their bullpen very often with leads, and that's an issue. So look for the Brewers to try to make any type of move to get some offensive players in the building. It's going to be needed because if they go into next year with the same type of team, you might get some better play from a couple guys. Obviously, Garcia might be a little better. Yelich might be a little better, but you need to build. You need to build on more. The Cincinnati Reds, they're all in right now. The contracts they signed guys to, Moustakas, Castellanos, okay, they're all in. They're going to try to win right away. The thing that carried them a lot was their pitching. Here's the problem. Trevor Bauer's a free agent. He played for $17 million last year. He could get more on a one-year contract, which is something he talked about doing. He said he wants to sign one-year deals to maximize his annual salaries. Well, coming off of this season where he could possibly be the National League Cy Young, he is going to be at his highest value, his highest possible value. And I won't be shocked if the Reds offer that. But there's other teams out there like the Angels who would need some pitching help. There's others. There's a lot of other teams that need pitching help. That for one-year deal, they might take that dive as well and see what happens. The Reds are a sneaky team to also consider for Francisco Lindor. I'm going to put that one out there. Anything that they can do to help this team, they're going to go all in. They might trade for a year of Lindor. They might do that. It just feels like with the contracts they signed, they think they are closer to contention than anything else. And while they have the right to believe that when they made the playoffs this last year, you wonder where this is going to go if things have a down year next year. They might be selling some contracts after that. So we'll see what happens with the Cincinnati Reds there. The St. Louis Cardinals, I think it's going to be a lot of the same with this team. I really do. They're going to have some guys coming back from injuries, some guys coming back that opted out of the season. They always feel like the team that just makes good moves, good solid moves. When they traded for Paul Goldschmidt, it just felt like, yeah, that's such a Cardinal thing to do. They're just going to, they pounced at the right time to grab this solid player that's going to be there for the next how many years. They're almost sneaky about how they just up their roster all the time. Now, there's a couple guys that are also on this team that are going to be free agents. Adam Wainwright, Yadier Molina. He was thinking about retiring, but he's saying that he wants to play in 2021. These are going to be two guys, Wainwright and Molina, that are going to be pressured to be re-signed, which, they could, if Wainwright pitches like he did This last year, he'll be fine. And Yadier Molina, what he brings defensively and as a leader behind the plate, I mean, that's something that's valuable. I mean, these guys are Cardinals staples. It's going to be interesting to see if they do anything else. And they're going to be a team that I feel like sneaks in and just makes one move and you go, we just let the Cardinals get him, huh? We just let that happen. They're hard to predict, but I think they are going to stay pretty steadily close to the same team that they were this year. The other team, though, we had the Twins that are going to be difficult to predict, but the other one that I think is difficult to see what they're going to do is the Chicago Cubs. It sounded like Javier Baez wasn't far from getting an extension in March. And this was close to when Yelich got his. I don't think Baez is going to get as much as Yelich, but that contract could be similar. But there's also other guys we need to talk about. Chris Bryant. He's going to have some contract conversations that are coming up. What are they going to do there? Is he going to be moved along? I think this is the team in the National League that even though they contended, even though they were a good team, finished at the top of the NL Central, we could see some shakeups. Same with their pitching. Jose Quintana, I believe, is a free agent. What's happening with Lester? We have some moves with the Cubs that could be interesting. And don't be surprised if they get in on some trade noise as well. There was talks earlier in the year of a swap of Chris Bryant with one of the stars from Colorado, whether Trevor Story or Arenado. There was conversations of it. Rumors, I should say. They feel like they could be going to some sort of rebuild. Some sort of rebuild in the sense of not shutting it all down, like giving up on all types of competing. But they're going to have decisions. I mean, Lester is done. He's 2021 free agent. Chatwood will be gone, 2021 free agent. We don't know if Rizzo is going to be back. There's just a lot of things that could happen. There is an option there, club option, for Rizzo. So, I mean, they could be a team that really surprises us with some moves to change the roster up. They really could be. And while I do think they're going to try their hardest to stay competitive, because I don't look at the NL Central and go, okay, the Brewers are going to be scary next year. The Reds are going to be scary. I mean, we saw all that money they spent. Were they really that great of a team? Especially if they lose Bauer. The Cardinals are the team that are probably just sitting the most steady. Sitting the most steady is they're going to sit and probably watch a lot of these other teams and say, what are you guys going to do? What are you going to do to try and catch us? That's what it feels like. And it's fun to talk about this in the sense of these teams that are eliminated. It's funny considering that they're all NL Central teams. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Cubs try to make some noise and really change things up next year. I really don't. So that's just a quick look at what could be coming up next for some of our playoff elims. Fun stuff to talk about. That's going to be it for this episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. I want to thank you again for listening. It means a great deal. You can download us on any of your platforms where you get podcasts. If you could, leave a nice review, any type of comment. What do you think these teams have coming up for them that eliminated from the playoffs this year? What do you think you learned from the playoffs this season? Maybe even some things you're looking forward to in the NLDS and the ALDS. A lot of great stuff we talked about today. But that's going to be it for me. I'm going to sign off and say thank you again for listening here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also find follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.